Well, welcome again to Excel Still More. This is John Pontier, Greg Harris, here to share our, well, mostly our experiences to date, to hopefully give people an opportunity to kind of watch and learn. So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about, which was part of your background, but it fits well within, I think, the household of faith model, and that is the area of like home education.
Right.
Using the home as the center to which mom, dad, educate the children, which is something you were very involved with.
Right.
Early in years in Sono's life and the 80s, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Beginning around 1980, 81, we began homeschooling our youngest, or our oldest son, the only son at the time, Josh. And homeschooling became a very big part of my work, promoting and advocating for Christian education, and with the home being the primary focus of that. And so it's been an important part, and a big part of my emphasis in the homeschooling movement was the restoration of the household and its proper role within the church. If you don't have a household that is being managed as an embassy of God's kingdom, if you don't have a household that's being managed as it was intended to be, you don't have the incubator for church leadership that's needed. You want men who know how to manage their own household well. And at the time, it was pretty obvious that we had outsourced so much of what God intended for the household, the family, to do for itself, for its own members, that the home had become just a place to go when nothing else was open. People weren't teaching their kids at home. The idea of home and family business had kind of become a marginalized idea. The emphasis on hospitality was weakened. People were using restaurants and other places. The medical care had gone into the hospitals and the clinics. The hospitality had escaped into the hotel industry and the events facility venues. Weddings were not being held in homes. All of these things had been pushed out in our modern sophistication, and it left the household gutted of its biblical responsibilities. And so it became my vision was to restore the Christian household to its proper role, so that it was an effective incubator for raising up biblically qualified leadership. And the low-hanging fruit at that time was the issue of education and business. Making the home a place of study and instruction and scholarship, not just for the children, for the whole family, but with the children getting their education there. And then making the home a place where we restored the idea of home economics, and the home became a place to be productive and to keep costs down and even to increase revenue and income through some business ventures. So that was my background.
Well, it's interesting to listen to kind of how the Lord brought you into the homeschooling environment. I was brought up in I'd say the standard mode, with the public schools and those kind of things. And I was like flabbergasted at the concept of, can you really homeschool your own kids? I thought, that sounds great. Why didn't anybody tell me that when I was a kid? But we found a similar thing where which by the way, I did ask my wife if she'd be willing to homeschool our kids before we got married.
Did she really?
Yeah, and she said she would, but then years later she confessed that she said she would, thinking that I would forget. And I didn't forget. Yeah. And thankfully she still agreed. But it pulled our family together. We had a common focus, a common mission,
right,
as husband and wife, and when you educate at home, it creates opportunities to where, build teamwork and you do projects together. And,
Hmm.
it just really helps give you maybe a superstructure
Right.
in which to operate and do the kinds
Right.
of things you're
Right.
talking about.
Well, when we began homeschooling in 1981, my wife and I had been convinced that this was a good idea by an elementary school principal in the public school system, who
Probably
was
didn't know he did that. But anyway.
yeah this was in South Texas.